our home offices to make sure that we're staying connected with each other, sharing ideas, really kind of giving each other a shot in the arm so we can start each day with a renewed purpose and maybe some new ideas and techniques. So kudos to Courtney for doing this every week. I think it's a really valuable platform, and I appreciate you guys all tuning in today. So I hope I have some little nuggets of wisdom to share. But I've been in the industry almost 25 years. Yeah, kind of scary to say. I started out.
So it's okay.
What did you say?
You started when you were 2 years old, so it's okay.
Exactly. I did. I was 2. I started young, but I kind of, like I would imagine most of us, fell into the industry. I had graduated from college. I lived back east, and one of my really, really good friends was an electrical engineer. He still is with HNTV, and he said, they're hiring marketing here. And didn't you graduate with a marketing degree? And I was like, what do engineers need marketers for? Oh. So I just went in for like the excitement of doing the interview and just to see like what the process felt like, and ended up getting the job. I worked on 255s and 254s, so that does definitely date me, and SOQ packages for our Northeast division. I did get promoted within HNTV to be their marketing manager, and then I was telecommuting before work from home was cool because I moved to California and still worked for the Northeast division. So what's really interesting is as my career has sort of evolved, I got more involved in business development, kind of steered away from proposals and marketing. And then my last couple of corporate jobs have been wearing multiple hats of marketing and business development. So one of the things that I've noticed sort of throughout my career is some of the firms that I went to had a complete lack of process related to proposals. And we were machines. We were hamsters on a wheel, you know, one proposal after another. And when you start to really pull back the analytics of what it costs your firm to go after pursuits, I had to really take a step back as the manager of that department and say, does this make any sense? Are we going after things that, you know, we have a high chance of winning? And what does all of that look like? And so through my experience, I have picked up some things along the way to create a go-no-go process. There's no perfect process. You have to figure out what's right for your own firm. But I'm a firm believer in creating and implementing a go-no-go process. I think the key to a go-no-go process is getting the buy-in from your senior management team and your leadership team to make sure that they support the process. That's also going to honestly minimize any pushback you have from project managers to start using the go-no-go process in an effective way. So I think go-no-go really is a way for you to increase your strategic thinking. What jobs can we win? Can we deliver quality work? Can we make money? Will they be able to be a good repeat client for us? All of those things really have to be taken into consideration. So from a financial perspective, we don't want to chase work and waste everyone's time. While we're quote unquote overhead for most positions, it's still money out of our pockets and money that impacts our bottom line. So with that, I'm gonna, I just put together a couple of slides, and if anybody has any questions, I don't know, Courtney, do you want them to ask along the way or wait till the end? I'll leave it up to you guys, but I'll let Courtney kind of moderate for me.
Yeah, feel free to drop it in the chat window.
Okay.
Or raise your hand, unmute, and we're kind of a relaxed group, so it's whatever the presenter is comfortable with.
Okay. All right. So I'll let that load for a second. I think you guys can see it now. Okay. All right. So I already kind of gave you a little bit of an intro of who I am. I guess I'll back up a little bit. So I did leave the quote unquote corporate world. And 2 years ago, I joined my husband in business. My husband also works for AECom. So our business is sort of a moonlight for him on the civil side, but I do consulting practices under that umbrella. So if you don't have a go-no-go process, I feel like you're throwing spaghetti at the wall. And so how do we do that? How can we avoid having this, although I love the baby and it's super cute, but it's total chaos sometimes when you're submitting a flyer. It doesn't make sense. We don't know anything about the client. Our proposal's cookie cutter and vanilla. And so we want to be able to determine the real probability of winning work. So let's talk a little bit about the value of go-no-go. you need to ask about the client, the project, where our firm sits. Is it worth pursuing it for us? There has to be very compelling reasons and a very compelling reason to override a go-no-go process that you put together. So we need to be asking these questions, in my opinion, through the entire business development process. After you have a client meeting and you identify the prospect, is this really something that is well suited for our company? Once you research the project details, you find out maybe there's an incumbent. Can you get on their team? What does the teaming arrangements look like? What does your competition start to look like? Then you want to look at, when the RFP actually comes out, is the RFP what you thought it was going to be based on your client conversations and your market intel? And are there any real red flags in that process? So for me, these are a couple of things that I really think add value to this process. It increases your business development teams and your project managers to really think proactively. You want to be able to identify your clients, prioritize your time, identify projects that are coming out that are well suited for your firm. And the more that you know and you share that information from a business development perspective into the marketing effort, it really creates an opportunity for you to prepare a compelling proposal that is very specific to the opportunity and very specific to that owner. In my experience, the go-no-go process has also reduced the number of flyers. I cannot tell you how many PMs have walked into my office and said, well, the client told us to submit. Yeah, in public works, they're required to have 3. They already have their favorite, and they just have to have a couple of other people that are going to submit so they can say to their city council, look at the interest we had on this project, and you have no chance of really winning. You didn't know about it before it came out. You didn't know about the client. We don't know any of their hot buttons. Nothing really differentiates us. The other thing that I love is they will come in and say, well, I have staff sitting on overhead budgets, so they might as well just start working on this proposal, because what else are they going to do? There are a million other things I would have somebody do that's on the technical side, sitting on an overhead budget to help marketing, write project descriptions, update their resume. The list kind of goes on and on, versus spending 40 or 60 hours submitting a proposal that's not going to generate any kind of positive result for us. Shotgun versus rifle approach. I'm sure most of you are familiar with this concept where, the shotgun approach is, you're going to take a shot and try and hit as many things as possible. And the rifle approach is very much focusing on the bullseye, that particular project, that particular client, and how we're going to be able to truly differentiate ourselves to win that work. And when you do that, when you dial in that effort and you are truly targeted on your focus of that client and that pursuit, I'm not going to guarantee it, but you're going to probably see some pretty positive results as it relates to your hit rate, your capture rate, and what your overall bottom line looks like in regards to your efficiency putting your proposal together. I also think it helps you really increase your return on investment. So this is not free money when you start putting proposals together. These are your valuable hours. This is your time. This is production time in terms of the cost that it takes to actually submit. And so I think a lot of people lose sight of, well, I'm already paying the marketing team, they're already sitting on an overhead budget. So what does it matter if they're working on a proposal that we don't have a chance of winning or not? There's just a higher and better use of your time than chasing things that we didn't know about. And that we didn't pre-position for. And so the struggle then becomes, are we making good decisions, and how is this impacting our bottom line? And so these are kind of my overarching reasons as to why I think there's value in this process. Who benefits? It really is a firm-wide benefit when you create a go-no-go process. It's going to help you. We didn't really do a poll of the room, but I presume since you're all on this call, you're all on the marketing side. So we cannot continue to function in our firms putting together 20, 30, 40 proposals a month. It is going to burn us out. We leave the industry, we get frustrated, we tell our bosses we're never doing proposals again. None of that's healthy on any level. And so when I implemented the go-no-go process in the last company I worked for, we had submitted I had a team of 2 marketing coordinators and myself who served as a marketing coordinator / QA QC manager for everything that went out the door. In just 6 months, we submitted 500 actual proposals. 500. Those aren't scope and fee. That is quals, proposal, all of that. And it was completely unsustainable. And I said, you either need to hire me 4 new people because we need to have that. And we only all got paid 40 hours because we were salaried. So we didn't get paid for any of the 60, 80, 90-hour weeks that we were working. And so this really is a way for your firms to recognize the value that you bring by not trying to kill you. I jokingly say I had attempted homicide at my last job because I felt like they tried to kill me with proposals, but we want to try and avoid the burnout because it happens. It's reality, and I'm not trying to sugarcoat that, obviously, but I think that first and foremost, we benefit from that because we are spending our time and energy and our creativity in the proposals that deserve it. And I think that that's the primary benefit is we're not glorified secretaries. We are skilled at what we do and we should be treated as such. Secondly, the technical staff. Unless you have a principal who's coming in and is like, we're going to chase this and I'm going to designate so-and-so, they're not committed. They don't care. They're being told to do it. And so none of those things are a recipe for success. And technical staff right now are really overwhelmed. They have a lot of deadlines. They're not used to working from home for the most part. So they have a lot of things on their plate that if we can be more strategic about what we're chasing, we have a better chance of actually getting a solid project approach from them, a real true project understanding, because they've taken the time and they're invested in this pursuit to talk to the client, to know about what the key buttons and key issues and hot buttons are. The entire firm is going to benefit at the end of the day because you're going to be maximizing your overhead dollars. I'm not necessarily guaranteeing that there's going to be a complete reduction in overhead, but you're going to be spending your efforts in a much better way because you're going to have a much better result in regards to getting shortlisted or actually winning that work. And ultimately, everything we do should be about our clients because it's all about them. It's never about us. And you'll hear that next week, I think. Mercedes is on doing cover letters. And she does this. She used to live here in Reno. And so I got to know her really well. But she talks about how everything you do related to a proposal should be about your clients. And I agree with that. I did a survey a couple of years ago, about 3 years ago now, of clients that I said, what really stands out to you when you get proposals? You get 20, 30 generic-ish SOQs for on-call services. What really makes firms stand out? And across the board, almost unilaterally, it was, they need to know about my capital program. They need to know about my team. They need to know about our shortfalls. They need to know about our weaknesses. The more that you can add sprinkles, whipped cream, and cherry on top to your proposals, the more that the clients are going to invest in you and want to work with you. So you have to keep in mind that a client does not want to read, we are so excited to submit this proposal. They do not want to read all about your firm, all about your firm. They want to know about, do you know what my issues are and how are you going to help me solve them? And so the more that we can keep that in the forefront of our thoughts when we're talking about a go-no-go process, the better off your proposal is going to be. And again, it's going to have a return on your investment. So here are some things to consider. I have probably 20, 25 go-no-go forms that I've sort of collected over time. If you aren't a member of SMPS and you want to, or if you are a member of SMPS, they do have a depository, a library where a lot of folks have shared what their go-no-go forms look like. But for me, historically across my career, these are the things that I've taken into consideration that I think have true meaning on making the decision of a go or a no-go. In general, so again, I don't want to say that there's a hard and fast rule here because everything is a little bit different, but I typically want to know a few things. Is this project wired for a particular firm? So when it's a flyer, you didn't know anything about it, I guarantee you someone else knew something about it. It has already done some preliminary work and has already been talking to the client. So if you are responding reactively to an RFP, I would encourage you to really think hard about that because someone else is probably positioned to win that work. Can we work within the client's contract? A lot of people don't take this into consideration. There's some very onerous contract language floating around right now from procurement departments. And I'm talking primarily on qualifications-based selection, obviously. I don't think I needed to say that out loud. But I think that what a lot of procurement departments don't realize is that we can't sign some of the things that their attorneys think we can sign because our insurance liabilities don't cover it. And so I had as one of my proposal processes is once we found out about an opportunity, typically we knew enough about that entity that we were pursuing work with that we would know what their contract language looked like. And I had our legal department review their contracts in advance to make sure that we didn't have any red flags. Can we deliver the work within the client's fee structure? Do we know how much money they have allocated? If they have $25,000 allocated to design a brand new interchange in the downtown area of your city, FYI, not enough money to do the work that they're asking for. So you have to take a look at all of those things in regards to their budget and their contractual terms to just even make sure it passes the mustard. If you win this work, is a conflict of interest with another client. Oftentimes this sort of gets overlooked. It's a conflict of interest, like we have an employee who used to work with you and things like that. But if you win a controversial project or what's perceived as a controversial project in your hometown, and the mayor is completely against this project, what is that going to do for you in terms of community relations moving forward? Potentially getting blackballed off of other projects because you're working with a developer that they don't like. So think through some of the outside influences that could impact the overall health and wellness of the firm if you pursued it. Based on price alone, if you know you're not the cheapest dog in town and they want to have budget is all they care about, and you're not going to be able to do it within their budget, why are you banging your head against a wall to pursue it if you can't even do the work for the price that they want to pay? So you walk away because they're not your ideal client. They're not willing to value what you have because of the budgetary constraints that they have. So the next kind of deal breaker, these are deal breakers for me. These first 4 to 6. If we can't affirmatively agree to these, then we have no business pursuing it. The availability part of it is key to me. We cannot, in a vacuum, put together a proposal. I need to have technical staff that have ample time to support me putting together a project understanding. Sometimes that could be a business development or client manager who understands the client and the hot buttons and some of the concerns that the client has so that I can add value into that proposal. But if a technical person isn't going to have time to help me, then why are we pursuing this? I can't write together. I mean, in theory, there were some proposals I knew enough about the clients because I had relationships with them because I wore dual hats. But in theory, you're not going to know enough about the client or the project type to be able to do their work for them. The other part to this is your time, your team's time. If you add this proposal onto your plate, what other proposals are going to be impacted? And if we don't have the appropriate resources to allocate, especially if it's sort of a borderline gray area go and not a solid, like we've been waiting for this for 2 years and it finally hit the street, of course, when we have 7 other pursuits due the same week. But you really have to look at whether or not you and your team have the capacity. The funding side of projects is always interesting to me because you can look through, especially on the public side, capital improvement programs to see how much money has been allocated. When is that money going to be spent? You can pretty much guarantee like 7 to 10 months prior to that money being allocated is when they're going to be bringing on your design team if you're on the engineering side. So you have a little bit of a lead time of knowing when certain things are going to hit. It can help you with your workload resourcing and whether or not you need to add additional staff in your marketing team. But the other part to that is, can you make money? So this is where your technical staff and maybe a principal level person can come in and say, you know what, we're not going to make any money on this project. It's going to cost us $30,000 to submit, go through the interview process. Financially, it just doesn't make sense. And sometimes you really have to make those hard decisions where you think you have a chance at winning, but the cost of pursuit is so significant that your profitability would be nil if you actually won that project and moved forward because of how much money you spent on the front end from an overhead perspective. Okay, couple more things to consider. Oops, what did I do? Okay, Capability and capacity. This is really on the technical side. Do we have enough similar projects that we could show as experience? And does our technical staff have the capacity to actually deliver the work? And so the last thing you want to do, and I know a lot of people bait and switch and you put your A team in a proposal and they end up getting your B or C team. You got to be really careful with that. Because it impacts your credibility with the client. Clients are getting savvy to that too, because they're adding in statements in their RFPs that say, I want a statement of commitment that the folks that you've proposed in this proposal will be dedicated and available throughout. And so when you start putting together your org chart and you're thinking about it as you identify and you're pre-positioning, who's the best PM for this job? Are we getting that PM in front of the client? And will this PM have the availability, and the technical leads he's assigned, are they going to have the availability to support him? Because the last thing you want to do is win work and then not be able to deliver on it. Client relations and intelligence. To me, this is one of the key things that I think a lot of people fall a little bit short on when it comes to the go, no go. Really being dialed in with your strategic planning and your marketing planning, and knowing who your priority and tier 1 clients are is really, really important from this perspective. Are you talking to the right people? Are you having conversations across the firm with that client? So that way, like I just said, are you getting the PM in front of that client? It can't just be your business development person, but how can you get your technical team in front of them so that they have comfort and understanding and knowledge of who your technical team is going to be moving forward that's going to deliver that work. Do you know who else is going to be on the selection panel? So getting information from just one person within a client is probably not going to be the right answer. And this is why pre-positioning is so important. Once an RFP hits the street, like you're only required, most of the time, you're only allowed to talk to who the contact is in the RFP, which is usually a procurement person. They can't answer any technical questions for you. And so really focusing on the pre-positioning, getting to know who's going to be on the selection panel, what are their hot buttons. Just because the project manager for the owner has one particular hot button, there may be somebody who's really concerned about maybe some of the environmental components. And you never hear about environmental from the PM. He cares about scope, schedule, and budget. That's it. We already talked about knowing about the RFP in advance. I think there's a tremendous amount of benefit to that. I do recognize that there are some times that a client pushes out an RFP that nobody really knew about based on need. That's happening a lot right now. So that's why I think this conversation is so relevant. You have to really dial in the other parts and the other areas of consideration to make a decision on whether or not that RFP response makes sense for your firm. Competition is the other thing that I weigh heavily when I look at whether or not we should pursue a project. Who are they? Do they have similar skills? Are they going to have a big team where we're under, all under one umbrella? Is there going to be a large group of competition? I'll give you an example. Here in Reno, they have a general SOQ that comes out of a transportation commission here. They limited the selection to 8 firms. 8. They had 37 submittals. And so when you sit there and you think about, well, I don't have any of the Transportation Commission's projects on my portfolio, none of my PMs have worked for them. Why would you spend your time and energy to submit an SOQ knowing full well I could rattle off the 8 before they even selected the 8? Because they had the knowledge, the relationships, they were involved in CIP development, and they had the global expertise that the Transportation Commission was looking for. So you really have to think about, if there's going to be a huge level of competition, you have to have a heart-to-heart with yourself on whether or not you're truly the best fit for that client in that pursuit. Okay, so when I said to you there's no one format, I mean it. It's really kind of a Goldilocks situation where it's too hot, too cold, just right. So there are some folks that I have seen that have used like weighted rankings where you have like 5 or 6 different key areas, or 10 or 15 key areas. Competition has a weighting of 5, knowledge of the client has a weighting of 10. You put down a 1 through 5, you extrapolate it out and you come up with, if it's over 75%, it's a go. That to me is too complicated. I'm a very simple person. I want yes or no because it's black and white. No one can really manipulate the system on me. I mean, you kind of can, but I know whether or not you've met with the client. I know whether or not we have the capacity and the capability to pursue the work. So I really love the yes, no part of a go, no go, because it is, like I said, so clear cut. I've seen others where there's like detailed matrices with negative, neutral, and positive scores. Then you have multiple factors and you have a raw score and you have all these other things. And to me, that's just way too in the weeds. But engineers love that kind of stuff. So you have to really, going back to what I said at the beginning, this has to be more of a collaborative process where you're getting buy-in from your leadership team and your technical team to actually move this forward. The other thing that I've seen in regards to format are lengthy questionnaires. So you ask an open-ended question and it's like, fill out 7 lines of text as to, you know, why we're well suited for this project. That to me can be manipulated to a certain extent because it's all in how it's worded and how you paint the picture. And so some really creative PMs can manipulate, in my opinion, an open questionnaire like that to make it sound flowery, and that we could pursue that and push it towards the go. So I like having more of a line in the sand, if you will. So I did create over time, this is one of my, and it's probably not super clear and I can share it with you. But again, I think it should be your own. But this is basically the yes, no, go, no, go that I have created. As you can tell, the top 2 areas under general and pursuit availability, if any of those are a no, then we should hard stop. It needs to be a no-go. If we can't support the proposal from a technical perspective, how does that make any sense? We're not achieving any of the goals that we've set for ourselves in regards to being strategic, pre-positioning, knowing our client. The technical staff has to be able to allocate some time. I'm a firm believer that you shouldn't pursue things that you're setting yourselves up for success. The other question, or the other excuse, if you will, that I get is, well, we have to submit a proposal so we can get our name in front of the client. What? So that is a horrible use of your BD dollars. How about you schedule a meeting with that client? A 1-hour meeting is going to give you way more information than a 50-hour pursuit from your marketing team to put together a proposal. So those types of quote unquote arguments with me don't really fly, because I've seen it firsthand that it never works out. I have allowed some of those types of things to go down as it relates to proposals, because I wanted the excuse with a client we had no relationship with to go and do a debrief. And that was a very challenging client. We had incumbents that we had to deal with. The guy was not returning our phone calls. So the debrief process was the only way that we could really get our foot in the door to have a conversation. That is not ideal. And we allowed it for a prospective client that we really wanted to start doing work with. So I know that these aren't hard and fast rules, and there's going to be some wiggle room in this, but you have to be smart about where that wiggle room lies. So who participates in this process? It's varied, and I think it needs to start with whoever is going to be the project manager. Sometime it could be your business development or your client manager. And again, I think this go decision should happen very early on in the process of identification of clients and project, and then you modify your go-no-go as you move through different stages of the RFP and client identification and client research. And then marketing needs to be involved in the process. What is your capacity? What is your availability? What workload do you have right now that could potentially impact putting together a solid response? And then ultimately, I've had to have principals involved. And a lot of that is because they could have cared less what I thought. If I think it's a no-go, they're going to go above me to the CEO and say, well, we should pursue this for all of the silly reasons we've already talked about. And so there are times that principals get involved. And again, it depends on like the size of your company. It could be an office manager that's a technical office manager that's involved. So the bottom line to this is it's not done in a vacuum. You guys all have to collaborate and look at the form. So you'll see, I'm going to go back just one second. You'll see at the bottom here, I had proposal sponsor. So that's whoever is starting this. So it's a project manager or BD or client manager. And then I weigh in on this as well. And I determine whether or not I agree or disagree. And when there's a disagreement, it gets escalated. But I think it's really important. You're putting your name on the bottom line that you're supporting this Go effort. And if I'm going to put my name on it, that means me and my team are going to be rolling up our sleeves and putting forth our best effort. So it kind of creates a level of accountability, if you will, when you sort of have them sign on the dotted line, so to speak. So I know I went through a ton of stuff in 30 minutes or less. So I'll open it up to any questions you guys have, or.
It looks like we had one that came through the chat. Thank you so much for using it. Those of you that have questions, feel free to use that, or you can just unmute and ask Joy directly. So the question that we have is, what was the process that you did or do when they actually do use the GoNoGo form? How was it decided? Who was part of the GoNoGo for that particular project? Did they meet to discuss once everybody had filled out the form? So basically, you've got the form, what happens next? Who does it go to? What happens then?
So once the form is approved, and again, it really kind of all depends on what works for you in terms of the process and what the form looks like, right? But once the form is completed, it really starts moving the proposal process forward. So let's just use my ideal instance. We have a tier 1 client. We've identified them, we've had meetings with them, we've identified like the nugget, which is the project we're going to pursue, right? And so we've already started capturing intel, we've done site investigations, we've done all of those things in advance of the RFP being released. So once the go happens after that initial step of this is a project, it's well suited for us, we're going to find out more information and move forward. I don't know how granular you want me to get, but I open up a proposal number so that every hour, whether it's my time, my team's time, or a technical person's time, is actually spent, and we're tracking that. So how can I honestly tell you at the end of the year whether or not we made money on a project without being able to tell you how much money we spent pursuing it? So I want to be able to track every marketing and BD dollar spent, again, whether that's technical or marketing time staff, until we make a decision maybe in that process to no-go it. And that's fine too, to not continue to move forward once we've identified information. But once we have a proposal number set up, we start having a capture meeting on, and that would include whoever my marketing lead is going to be, whether that's myself or a coordinator, who's going to be the designated project manager, and other folks that are really kind of core or key to the pursuit. Maybe an environmental person, or maybe you need somebody from your survey group, or you need to bring subs in if you're really gonna, put together a holistic team. And then you start working through your win themes and what your proposal is actually going to look like without knowing the specifics of what the RFP looks like. How many sections? How do they want it structured? All that kind of stuff. But you can start thinking about big picture. What differentiates us? What are their hot buttons? And really put together a client capture team that your BD guys and gals are out there having the conversation with different stakeholders within the organization, other people that they know that have any kind of impact on the project. So the more data we can gather, and I know that Courtney loves me here not like gathering data because she's a data girl, but the more data you can capture, the more specific your proposal is going to be. And so once the form is gone through in that particular phase, when the RFP actually comes out, unless there's a red flag that comes up during Intel, when the RFP comes out, we reevaluate. Maybe the scope of work isn't what we thought it was based on the conversations we had with the client. So what do we have to do to course correct, or maybe reevaluate whether or not that's a go? But it really is sort of a fluid process. Once they determine it's a go, we set up a proposal pursuit number and we move forward through that proposal process.
One thing I would add to that is if you do have a CRM system in place, there are forms typically built into those that you can use to automate some of that process. So I know one of our clients is more of the hard numbers. This answer is this score. And then for them, once it's over 75%, then it gets sent to a specific leadership group of the BD, and then they start having conversations about that. But if it's below that score, until things change, it's not brought to the table. So that is something that you can investigate as well.
Yeah, sometimes there's like a mediation that goes down, like where if I can't ground truth what you're telling me and actually have some data to back up, your go and I question it, then sometimes there's a little bit bigger group of people who have to chime in, and it usually goes to, at least at my old company, it went right to the CEO. So he would get involved in some conversations, and it was usually one PM that I struggled with. So there's that. Another question that was asked was about the cost. And so I wanted, and we picked a number that made sense to us at the time. And this was when we were in growth mode and with my previous company, not here. And so anything that, from a cost perspective for marketing, so what that proposal effort was going to cost, it required my approval. And that's how we set it up, that if it's going to be a 2-week effort plus a short list interview prep, all of the things that go along with that, and you're talking anywhere between $10,000, $15,000 when all is said and done, we needed to be able to sign off on that because it's a long pursuit. And so the dollar amount really is based on what your comfort level is. I mean, there are some firms that I've seen that if you're spending $1 on marketing, then your project manager needs, it goes back to just the value that the process brings to your firm. And so the cost is more of what's incurred from an internal perspective, not the value of the proposal. I will say that I have seen in the past that if it's a smaller, simpler pursuit, people wanted to forego the GoNoGo process. Oh, well, it's only going to be a small thing. It's just a quick SOQ package, blah, blah, blah. There's no such thing in marketing. We still have to follow the requirements. We still have to include specific information. Oftentimes there's a fee when it's those types of smaller efforts. So a technical person has to give me, or at least think about a scope and tasks to be able to give me a fee. And so the smaller efforts, in my opinion, where they're like, it's just a simple effort, are actually the ones that cost you the most money and don't provide you any kind of ROI.
The other thing that I know that you can do that I've had clients do as well is reach out to third-party consultants who do proposals all the time, and they are very quick and adequate to look at an RFP and tell you how much time and what it would cost.
Yep.
So that's a good litmus test too of, hey, if our staff was really busy right now and we had to hire a consultant to do this, it would cost us $15,000. It would cost us $15,000 to do it internally as well. Is it worth that money? So it's kind of a good, hey, we're not making this number up. This is a real number that is out there in the market.
So that's a great point, Courtney. I have done previously where you have to do an estimate on like what your proposal costs are going to be. And that really opens some guys' eyes to guys and girls. I just say guys in generality. Pay attention to Courtney's conversation with Danielle tomorrow. I'm probably all wrong and not politically correct. But anyhow, I think that you have to really know what it costs to put these things together. And if you've not spent the time, I can tell you it was really eye-opening when I became a manager and I was responsible for, doling out proposals and really trying to figure out like really complex proposals. We did not give to a junior or a brand new marketing coordinator. We gave those to senior marketing coordinators because they were more efficient. They had better processes. They were seasoned. Like you have to really know your people and you have to know what it's going to cost. Worst case scenario, if you're having a brand new marketing coordinator put that proposal together, what's it going to cost? How much of your time is it going to take to oversee it? Things like that. And if you don't have a team, I think the other part to think about is, what's your time worth? Right. I left my last corporate job and started with my husband for the sole reason that I did not want to be on a proposal hamster wheel anymore. And the more we grew, the less we followed the GoNoGo process and the less we started winning. And it was really hard for me because my management team splintered off, and what we all believed in and agreed to, 3 years into me working for them was great. But then 5 years working for them, it was like, well, Joy, we really need to go after this because it's a new market. And I was like, no, it doesn't meet our GoNoGo. And we can't continue to take time away from our families and the things that are important to us to spend 80 hours a week working on proposals. Exactly. So that's my little.
The other kind of advice that I would kind of throw in there is we all have a lot of pride as marketers, is what I have found. Absolutely, we should, and we should take pride in our work, but do not fear letting them fail and doing a proposal on their own, because then they really value you. And it was so hard for me to do that as a marketing manager. So I was like, oh God, this is our reputation. It's our brand. It's our blah, blah, blah. Yeah. All right, Mr. Project manager, you want to chase this? Here's the RFP. Good luck. I don't have I don't agree that we should do it. And then sure enough, like a week later, they come back and be like, yeah, we shouldn't be chasing this. This is a lot of work. This isn't in our wheelhouse. We don't have the projects to back this up in our portfolio. That's a valuable lesson that you just learned. I've been telling you that and you didn't hear me. But their firsthand experience changes their perspective wildly.
And I think it's important too, when a go happens, let's just say none of the pre-marketing really happened. We knew the client, we knew the RFP was coming out. We haven't really done any pre-marketing per se. When you sit down and have your kickoff meeting, that's kind of where the rubber hits the road, in my opinion. Do we have 5 similar projects that meet the scope of work? Are they within the last 5 years? I mean, that's kind of the level of detail clients are getting to right now in their RFPs. The people that you're proposing, did they work on the same projects that you have in your similar experience? Especially when you start looking at federal procurement, when you're trying to tie your SF330 people to your people to your projects. You really have to start thinking about the interconnectivity of your portfolio with the pursuit you're chasing. And if you're trying to put a square peg in a round hole, it's just not going to work and you're not going to win that job. So even after an initial go and you sit down and have your proposal kickoff, if you can't click those boxes per the RFP, why waste your time? So I get really passionate about this stuff. So.
Well said, yes. The one thing I wrote down that I feel like I'm always hesitant to bring it up, because it's one of those things that if you are in a proposal sweatshop, you want to hurt me for even bringing this up. So if you are there, my heart goes out to you. And I was there at one point in my career too. So we've all been there. So that said, the other thing that I started to do once I had the bandwidth to be more strategic is to apply a go-no-go decision to our own marketing initiatives, our own marketing campaigns. And it really does change the shift of, should we be doing this marketing campaign? What are the analytics? Are we getting a good hit rate? When you're just doing it for doing its sake, you're not looking or thinking about that. But if you have a go-no-go decision for even your marketing efforts or things like trade shows, should we be going? Don't just go because your competitor's going or whatever the excuse is of the month. But having those go-no-go decisions helps as well. It looks like we've got another chat, a little bit off topic question. One of the people from the group emailed about the cover letter event that Joy mentioned. So it is our next month, July 1st. Mercedes is covering that topic. You're good. I confused you because we talked about the Danielle and I conversation meet every week. So our marketing call is every first Wednesday of the month, and Mercedes is our guest speaker, and she'll be covering that topic next first Wednesday, which is July 1st. And it should be on the Eventbrite page. It might not be, her name might not be on our specific website, but anyway, if you click that link, you should be able to see it. Any other questions for Joy?
They're letting me off easy today. I like it.
You and I could nerd out on this for quite some time.
I know.
And talk other stories, I'm sure.
So weird. We're such weirdos.
I know, right? All right. So the housekeeping, thank you so much for being our guest speaker and talking about a much needed process for marketers. I've been furiously typing notes for our recap, so I'll send that to you, Joy, just so you can give your stamp of approval and make sure I didn't misrepresent anything. I'll put the recording up as well, and then y'all feel free to share it to colleagues on social media if other, like your SNPS local chapter that is looking at no-go process or having that discussion. Feel free to share that. For those that weren't on at the very beginning, I invite you to tune back in tomorrow afternoon around this time, Danielle Gray and I are going to be having a discussion about race and the things that are going on. So definitely check out our social media pages or platforms if you have no idea what I'm talking about. So thank you for spending some time with us today. And it was so great to see you again, Joy. And I hope
Thanks
to see
for the
you
opportunity.
guys either tomorrow or guys, see, I do the same thing.
I know. It's collective, right? Isn't it collective? No,
right?
It's
Y'all, I'll do
y'all.
that.
I don't know. I'm from New Jersey. Y'all just doesn't flow. It sounds weird when I say y'all.
Tomorrow or next first Wednesday on July 1st.
Okay. Oh. Bye. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.